Cloud security compliance doesn't have to be complicated. Whether your business is migrating to the cloud or a seasoned cloud service provider, BAR Advisory can help you simplify security and compliance frameworks, including SOC, ISO, and HITRUST. As an extension of your team, BAR specialists will put your people first and empower them with the knowledge and tools needed to stay secure and compliant at every stage of your business growth. Learn how BAR can help your company build trust with consumers and become cyber resilient at securityweekly.com/BAR Advisory. That's BARR Advisory. Is your organization finding it difficult to achieve compliance and scale its security posture? As G2's highest rated cloud compliance software, Drata streamlines your SOC 2, ISO 27001, PCI DSS, HIPAA, GDPR, and many more security frameworks, and provides continuous 24-hour control monitoring so you can focus on scaling securely. Drata is also the only compliance automation platform with a private tenant database. That's like having your cake and securing it too. Listeners of Business Security Weekly get 10% off Drata by visiting securityweekly.com/Drata. That's DRATA. Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque and Tyler Robinson. Security Weekly listeners save 20% on InfoSec World 2022 passes. InfoSec World will be held September 27th through 29th at Disney's Coronado Springs Resort in Lake Buena Vista, Florida. Visit securityweekly.com/ISW and use the code ISW22-SecWeek20 to secure your spot now. Do you have any specific guests or topics that you want us to cover on one of the shows? Submit your suggestions for guests by visiting securityweekly.com/guests and completing the form. We review those suggestions often and will reach out to you once reviewed. All right, gentlemen, articles of the week. This first, I try to start with leadership articles, go into CISO, then go into communications, and then some miscellaneous, right?
And Matt, you always try to slip one in there that you know are going to get me all excited and happy.
Of course.
This first one, you did it, brother.
This is a great article on the 7 uniquely personal bits of wisdom to improve your leadership. And the author of this one obviously was in the military, Jason. So
happened to be a Marine. I mean, come on. Absolutely love the article. I mean, you know, I'm reading this article and I'm replaying my life, not just military, but family, right? So you guys know, I'm first generation American, grew up in an old school Portuguese household. And in the first item there was, whatever you're doing, do it like you mean it. I don't know how many times I heard that in Portuguese. Same idea, right? Like, if you're going to put effort into it, do it like you mean it, right? Take pride in what you're doing. If you're sweeping the floor, if you're cleaning the tub, doesn't matter. Take pride in your work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the way I grew up. Growing up, my parents they lived on the farm. My grandparents were farmers. Like, I learned so many interesting life skills from my parents, from my dad especially. I mean, we did everything. Like, I remember in high school when because I was doing electrical work because I wanted to be an electrical engineer, and ended up doing what I do now, which is interesting. But I remember like rewiring the house with my dad, like, because that's what you did. You just did it. And if you don't have pride in your work, like, how are you ever going to survive in the world, in most cases, like any job, but let alone in a leadership role, right? And it was funny. Somebody the other day, Jason, texted me. We were on a call together, and somebody just sent me a Slack message, said, "Love your energy." I'm like, well, of course. That's why I'm here. Like, I'm here because I'm excited to be here, because I have pride in what I do. Like, that just should be a common theme no matter what.
Obviously, yeah, it's rare. It unfortunately it is. But, folks like us who are in that position to be able to mentor, we can have those conversations like my grandparents and parents had with me. We can have those same kind of conversations when we're mentoring folks, right? Focus on the little things. Do them really, really well. And then as you progress through your career, you're going to get really good at doing the big things as well. It's just, it's focusing on greatness. Try to be great.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a few other anecdotes between number 1 and number 5, but I wanted to talk about number 5, which is get out of people's way, right? Get out of your people's way. And I think that's so important. As taking on a new position like I just have in the last month and a half and understanding the employees and what they want and letting them succeed. I've told them, and Jason, you and I have had this conversation a lot. Like, eventually, I'm putting myself out of a job. Like, I will not be in this role, right? So I'm looking for people within the organization that is going to step up and take my place. I know that going into the job, because when you get into the couple of the other ones later, like, you're not in one place for 40 years. You're just not, right? So if you get out of your people's way and you give them the opportunity to step up, you are identifying the next set of leaders to take over when you leave.
That's the goal. That's the epitome of that servant leader, right? When you're a leader and you're serving the rest of your community, you're serving the rest of your staff, you're serving your employees, that's what you're doing. You're enabling them to be great. You're enabling them to do the great things. You're there to remove roadblocks and give them strategies and give them experience. But yeah, don't take control of everything. Ego needs to stay at the door. Like, leave your ego in the parking lot on the way in, because you're there to help the organization as a whole. And once you get to the highest levels of leadership, it's making sure that your staff is successful, not yourself.
That's really hard to do for some leaders, though. Those type A leaders, those red leaders, those OCD leaders, that micromanagement. But
Yeah.
you're 100%. That's when you start to see effective leadership. Is even if they are that personality type, and you see them get out of the way, the much more effective you actually, and the more respect your people end up having, so that the people that are below them that may have those same tendencies have an example to lead from example by. It's very important.
Yeah, I mean, Tyler, to your point, there was a time in the past where, serving for a command and control leader, you kind of had to because you needed a job. Those days are gone, absolutely gone. You know what you're going to see? Mass exodus. That type of leadership is going to force mass exodus, and they're going to go somewhere where they're valued. They're going to go somewhere where they can make a difference, where they can move the needle,
And it's a hot market
be
right now.
respected, right? It is. So be careful when you bring your ego into the workplace, because you could see people going bye bye, and all of a sudden it hits you like a brick wall. So you just got to be careful. One of the ones I loved here too, and there's a backstory around it, is, it's called write a letter and get the mustard, but ultimately the point of it is, if you don't like something, change it, right? Try to make change within your organization. Leadership is something within yourself. It's not a title. Any position in the organization can be a leader. So if you see something that you don't like, if you see something that needs to be changed, if you see something that needs to be enhanced or improved upon, don't complain about it. Don't sit at the water cooler talking crap about the company. Go make the change, right? I had that same mentality back in the day, and I said, I don't like why I'm getting taxed on my real estate. I don't like what's happening with my school system. I don't like what's happening within my local government. I ran for office and I got in. So I made the change, right? Put skin in the game. That's the goal there. Don't just sit there and complain, because it does no good. It doesn't make us move forward, right? It doesn't help us get better at what we do. Put some skin in the game. Help make the change.
Yeah, absolutely. Any others you want to touch on, Jason, while we're at it? There's 7 in here. We covered like 3.
Yeah. The last one, and this is something that I think is extremely important, because words matter. Choose your words wisely, right? When you're speaking to folks, make sure you're thinking about the message, articulating the message the right way, and have a level of vulnerability. If you screw up, admit that you screwed up and said something wrong, right? Don't just let people fester on it. Basically number 7 is, thank you for being nice to me 27 years ago, right? People remember the words you use and the impact those words had, good, bad, or indifferent. They remember things. So just choose words wisely. Words matter.
Sometimes people don't even remember the words you say. They remember how you made them feel.
Feel. Exactly it. Dead on. Yep. You got it.
Absolutely right. Next article: 4 key areas cybersecurity leaders should focus on. I didn't see any main surprises in here, but it's interesting what he puts in here, right? In that, security staff training. All right, well, we know that's important. You could apply this to pretty much any area of the business, not just cybersecurity leaders, by the way.
I would have taken that up a level, though, honestly, for that one. I really do agree with that, but I would have taken that up a level and done retention and or employee satisfaction. Like really ensuring that the team you have is happy, is being trained, they're getting the goals that they want, they've got a roadmap to move forward, all of the things that they need. And training is obviously one of those because they want to learn. People always need a challenge, especially high performers.
Yeah, what did
Tyler, it's so funny. I took the opposite viewpoint or perspective of that, and I said the title should have been changed every security director, not CISO. Right?
Yep.
Because I think these are tactical things the security director should be worried about, not the strategic thing the CISO should be worried about.
right in
Just different view. I'm just taking a different.
Well, you're not wrong.
remember what Jim Rouse said, no employee wants to be retained, they want to be grown. Right?
Right.
And so think about it from a growth perspective, not
Yeah.
necessarily just a retention perspective.
Yeah, no, dead on. So I think this article is targeting the wrong role, right? Because these are a lot more tactical items that I would work with, my security director or VP of security on, to execute. Those are the tactical execution pieces. It's not the strategic items that I'm going to go talk to the CEO about.
Yeah, right. No, they're not. Yeah.
Right? So I mean that's it. I think the responsibility level needs to either be bumped down a notch, or the topics need to be bumped up a little bit. To Tyler's point.
Yep, exactly right. Next article, Lloyd's of London to exclude state-backed attacks from cyber insurance policies. I think we all knew something like this was going to come eventually.
I think we talked about it on a bunch of shows. To be honest,
I think we predicted this was coming.
totally 100%, and we saw it coming. And just it wasn't Lloyd's, but other insurance brokers were doing this already, having little caveats in there that if it even smells of a nation-state attack, beep, sorry, not getting paid.
So dumb.
Yep.
Like, let's be real. This one's stupid as shit. Like, I can say that on there, right? Like,
It is. I mean, one of the terms in there that I said, holy crap, this is like red flag going off, Spidey sense went mental. Basically the line is they have to have a reasonable ability to attribute it to a nation state. What's reasonable?
how do you
Yeah.
They're
attribute
bouncing
that
off
to a
an
nation
IP
state?
from Russia? I mean, I don't like what?
The use of Cobalt
Right? I
Strike.
mean-
Watch out.
Exactly. That's it. So that literally just gave them a pass to say everything's excluded at the end of the day.
Yeah, pretty much.
Why bother having cyber insurance?
But we've seen this happening though from the other side, right? Like all of the corporations have passed the buck of responsibility. This was a sophisticated actor. This was a nation state attack so that they could say that they were doing reasonable security when in all actuality they weren't. Like cybersecurity is and the insurance is moving forward and they're pushing that bar where, hey, you need to be this tall to ride the ride. Let's get the bar up there and make sure we've got due diligence in place and we're actually doing the right things. Otherwise your policy is going to be astronomical or not happen. But putting clauses in here like this makes everybody have a scapegoat and everybody have an out. And this is not moving the bar forward in the right direction.
That's right. Agreed. 100%.
Yeah. And this is why these policies should not be used as your primary means to building your security strategy around, because they're going to get you in a lot of trouble because a lot of these clauses are going to exclude any payouts. Mm-hmm. Last week, we covered the fraud of a fraud case versus the computer. It was Social Engineering versus Computer Fraud Act and why they ruled against the claimant. And so you're going to see lots of these precedents now, really, because look, when the insurers lose money, they're not going to cover stuff. Like their job is to make money. That's what the whole insurance industry is about. And so, one time it was easy just to check a box, get cyber insurance, get some coverage. Not anymore. Those days are long gone.
Yep.
Long gone.
Yeah, we'll see how all this plays out, but at the end of the day, like you said, don't use cyber liability insurance as your foundation of your security program.
No, definitely not.
Can't be the main tenant.
Right, can't be. In the previous segment, we were talking about trust, right, which kind of ties into culture and creating a culture. And so this article from Harvard Business Review talks about rekindling the sense of community at work and gives you some ideas on how to do that. This has been a big topic for us internally at Living Security because we're all remote now, right? And when you're remote, it's harder to do this. And one of the things we've been talking about is not only different ways to do it. We've got our Teams platform, which is kind of interesting, where you can bring a team together and create kind of that mutual learning experience. And all new employees get paired together, and you go through a Teams exercise together. So it's a great way to to build kind of create that mutual learning opportunity. But one of the things I've been adamant about is whatever you do to build culture, it can't be on borrowed time. And what do I mean by that? You can't create an offsite where you take, 20 employees, you go offsite, and then have to figure out how to make up that day's worth of work. Like, doing these activities are great to build a great culture and to work together, but don't do it on borrowed time, because it creates more stress than it does benefit on the cultural shifts that you're looking for.
No, 100% agreed. I mean, just from our experience trying to do the same thing, build community, we have a really, really good business partner that we trust and we love. And when we do outings, we bring them in to take over, right? Sit in the shoes of our folks, so our folks can go off and spend the day with us, having fun, building community. And we'll trust our partner to kind of take the reins for the day, and make sure that our people are out there having the experience we meant them to have, right? I would say the other thing too is, especially with a lot of remote folks all over the country, work with your HR team and build some little communities within the larger community. We have book clubs that are virtual book clubs that people are jumping on and just chatting about the book of the month. And I mean, those type of things. We have virtual cocktail hour where some people who like whiskey and bourbon, we close for the day. All right, what's the bourbon of choice? Let's do tastings together. You can do those type of things. So just try to build a sense of community outside the larger community in kind of those little pockets, because now you're building relationships across the business that you normally wouldn't have, because you're connecting on something personal.
I think opening that up to a diverse set of things is very important. So it's not a corporately pushed or corporately forced agenda. Those are very important. They can be events where you have a lunch and learn where you get that cross-pollination of knowledge. People love to learn about security, about hacking, some of the cooler things that you're not going to otherwise, pass down across different departments. But when you're starting to talk about social aspects, like not everybody blends, not everybody enjoys the company of other people. So opening those up and providing the avenues as a corporation without the forcing is a very important aspect I think we need to see.
So just a little tidbit, right? We have an employee advisory board, and that employee advisory board comes in, and they come in because they want to. They become part of that employee advisory board because they choose to be part of the employee advisory board, and they help with these type of social aspects within the organization. So it's not COO sponsored or CEO sponsored. It's employee advisory board sponsored, and they're coming up with it collectively. And it's a diverse set of folks from all over the organization that are making these. Number one, they're helping us with corporate strategies because we want our employee input, right? But they're also helping with the connection and getting the community built, and they're really helping with the culture aspects as well. And they're the ones who came up with the book club and all of these other community-based events and promote them out there.
Yeah, the other thing we're trying to do is, we have a pretty young team. We're in a startup, and there's a lot of, we're in an interesting economic time. Most people haven't been through one of these before. I've been through a couple of them in my career. I've been through 3 of them that I can remember, downturns in the market. So, sometimes using these opportunities to educate, okay, this is what this means. This is what that means. So we're actually going to do, so our CEO, Ashley, she's going to do a session with our CFO. They're going to talk about startups and what does it mean and what are all the things you have to think about from a startup perspective and why you have to go raise capital. So people start to understand what's it like to be in a startup and what are some of the things you have to do. I said, we should do stuff about interest rates or buying a house or just topics that people in general might have, questions about. We can be there as leadership to educate people okay, this is what rising interest rates mean if you're looking to buy a house right now. And, is it better to rent or buy even with rising interest? You can create sessions that also help build the community and the culture in a much more open way. And so that, a lot of these ideas we're thinking about.
Dead on. It's the same, it's the same approach I like to take with cyber awareness related to people's personal life. They'll bring it into the workplace.
Exactly right.
So why not do the same thing for community building within your workforce? Find things that your workforce is interested in on a personal level. Do sessions around that. Now you're building community.
Right. Building community. And you're educating them. They can come to you with questions. It's creating a very positive culture because now employees are less stressed out at home and at work. Yeah, definitely. These last two articles are around, because it's budgeting season, right? We're getting ready to walk into budget season, right? So everybody's starting to, get ready to start their annual budgets for next year. So I pulled in a couple articles around some budgeting strategies, but then also areas from Forrester that have been identified. And one of the interesting recommendations in this first article was really around, where budgets could be cut, right? And ones that are untouchable. But in the article, it lays out kind of the ROI, the total cost of ownership discussion around certain tools or things you're spending money on, right? I've talked about this at a high level, Jason, like, are we spending money in the right places? And unless you go and look at what it's costing you, what it costs you to buy it, is it fully implemented? What's it costing you to operate the tool? What kind of value are you getting out of that tool? You don't know whether you should continue or not continue to spend that money, because you might be able to say, well, wait a minute, these tools aren't very effective. I can shift those dollars over here to do something more strategic that I need to do without increasing budget and maybe reducing it some.
Yeah. I mean, here I go being critical of the title again for another article, but I would argue that these are not the spending strategies for uncertain economic times. These are spending strategies every single year. I'm big on zero-based budgeting, making sure you know what you have. Do you need to have it? Are there overlaps? Are you realizing economies of scale? Is there opportunity for consolidation? Because you want to know what? If my capital expenditures go down, I can reinvest in my people, right? I can take that back to the best product I have, my engineers, my people, my consultants. So every year as a leader, it is your job to sit back and do zero-based budgeting and see where you have overlap, where can you consolidate, where can you realize economies of scale. Make sure you're not affecting the overall ability to execute for the company and be successful. But if you can consolidate, you're doing a whole hell of a lot of good. And that consolidation may help your people too, because now they have less tools, right? And they're getting better, even better outcomes. They could be getting better outcomes. We want the seat at the table. Show the business acumen, show fiscal responsibility, show your leadership, because once we have trust, we get better investments.
Finding that money too can go a long ways. You may be investing a small amount of money to go look at licensing cost, which can be part of an initiative for asset management. What assets do we have that have licensing costs that aren't being used or that we've over allocated now? Like, find those budget savings so that you can actually show that your people get that trust and buy-in of, hey, we have found these cost savings. Here's your why on why you're doing and helping us in this initiative. And now we put this back to you and reinvested that. Now you're doubling down on the next initiative you go about.
That's it. I mean, you just put me in the hot tub time machine there, Tyler, because 2013-ish, I sat with our leadership team and I'm like, I need $7,000 to have this software assurance audit to go through all of our subscriptions and all of our licensing. I guarantee you we're going to save money. You get a hard time. They don't want to invest. It's, in my eyes, it's a little bit of money. Well, coming out of it, we saved almost $1 million. So aren't you glad you put in, that few $1,000s or $7K to go save 1.2? Of course you're going to be happy. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
How is this a bad choice?
Yeah. Exactly.
But you got to prove the ROI before you spend the money, Jason.
I know, I get it. But see, this is where that trust comes into play, right? Because if you spend your first few years showing that you're fiscally responsible, you have, budgets on top of mind, you want to be not just a subject matter expert, but a financial leader in the organization to make sure you're investing correctly, spending correctly, you begin to get the trust. Then you can walk up and have that conversation like that. They're going to be, you want to know what? Jason's never screwed us. He's never told us wrong. All right, run with it. I trust you.
Right. last article, Forrester's identified some areas where security budget allocations are starting to form around. I'm not surprised by number one. Firms are underspending on cloud security, overspending on on-premise security. This is my point. Like when you go out and look at what you're spending in certain areas, are you spending the right amount based on the overall risk when you know a lot of stuff shifted to the cloud in the last 2 to 3 years, right? So I wasn't surprised by the first one. A spending shift to managed security service providers. I wasn't really surprised with this
Not
one.
surprised at that either.
Nope,
right?
because with the skill gap and the shortage of skilled workers, like who else is going to do this work, right?
Right.
Yeah. And then the last one I thought, because of living security, like cutting security awareness training won't save in the long term. Now, this one's a little interesting for me because we're a big believer that doing the right training will have the right impact, but not all security awareness training is equal. And so what they don't get into in this article, which would be an interesting deep dive for me, is, okay, you're right, it won't save in the long term, but can I look at being better about what training we're actually doing to get better engagement, to drive better outcomes? Because I still think the outcome gap is the challenge with this. And so when people don't see a reduction in risk around certain outcomes, they're like, well, security awareness isn't training, so we're just going to stop doing it, which this article is like, yeah, that doesn't save you anything in the long term. But if you were to focus your training based on where the actual risky behaviors were and allocating the right training there, and you did see outcomes, you're right. It would actually benefit you, but it doesn't get into some of those specifics in this article.
I mean, it's like the previous conversation. It's about the quality of what you're bringing to the table, right? I mean, we talked about assets not just being hardware, software, data. It's your partners as well. So, if you have a value add partner who's going to bring that outcome to the table, of course the investment's 100% worth it.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be worth it. If you have some, garbage cyber awareness training that's checking the box and making people watch 1 hour compliance videos, fail all day long, right? I mean, it's about that quality of the asset of the partnership you have with the cyber, your cyber awareness training firm.
That goes back to that
Correct.
Vince Lombardi quote. Practice makes perfect is actually not accurate. It's perfect practice makes perfect. So doing the right things continually is what actually makes you better, not practicing wrong things.
Right. Or just going through the motions because you have to from a compliance perspective, for example, right? Yeah, the difference between security and compliance, people. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.